Hey guys, this is Comic Ken, and this is a video comparing the business models between indie comics and webcomics. And basically I'm going to explain the freemium model, how that works, and how you can use it to build your own business in webcomics, like I'm doing with my webcomic, Saintly. So basically the difference between webcomics and indie comics is webcomics will pirate our own work for you, so you don't have to. It's called the freemium model. I first heard about it on one of my favorite podcasts ever called Webcomics Weekly, starring Brad Geiger, Dave Kellett, Scott Kurtz, and Chris Straub. It was hilarious. And I read more about it in their book, How to Make Webcomics. The Webcomics Handbook by Brad Geiger. And The Complete Guide to Self-Publishing Comics by Comfort Love and Adam Withers. It's where you create your webcomic, you post it online for free forever, and any extra goodies you can put behind a paywall, such as early releases or exclusive artwork. You keep posting it until the story is done, and you create physical products based on the webcomic, whether it be books, merchandise, games, animations, all that kind of stuff. You're basically building a franchise from the ground up and putting it online for free so that it stokes enough interest for people to buy the actual physical products from you, or to invest in a Patreon, or whatever you got going on with your webcomic. That's the freemium model versus indie comics, which is a lot different. It's something I've also done before in the past, where you're creating a comic and teasing at it little bits here and there online, showing art, talking about the writing process, maybe creating a YouTube channel talking about the comic, what it's going to be like, putting out trailers and teasers. Hey, it's coming, check this out. And then once the comic is done, or sometime before the full work is done, you decide to run a Kickstarter and get funding to either finish the book or print the book once it's done, so that you can send it out to backers and make money so that you can put it into the next book and continue the cycle again. And that's a completely different model that I don't even think has a nice, neat word like freemium, but I would just call it the indie comics model, where most of the work is not online. You can't read the story for free. You can only read it once you buy the actual thing. So I'm going to go over reasons why you might want to do it the indie comics way versus doing it the webcomics way. And so I'll go with webcomics first because that's what I'm doing with my own comic. And I'll describe to you exactly why I'm doing it that way. And it's because I'm a cartoonist where I can write and draw. And that is the thing I focus on. If you look at the style of the art, it's not very detailed. And that's by design, because I'm a solo artist. And so I can't really draw huge cityscapes in every panel and draw the most detailed outfits and characters, all the shading and stuff. And I personally prefer the cartoon style over a more realistic style like you would see in American comics and Superman, Batman, that kind of stuff. So I work well doing the anime style, and drawing webcomics is more fun for me. So putting it online for free is just what I'm used to. And it's almost a philosophical thing inside of me, where when I was a kid and just looking online for things to read or get interested in, I would stumble across webcomics here and there, and I'd be like, whoa, this is for free? I get to read all this for free? And like, I would eat them up like little snacks, like one after the other, one page after the other. And I was just like, whoa, this is great. This is amazing. Like, all this, I can read all this and I don't have to pay a dime. And if I wanted to get the physical book, I could go to a convention, or I could order off their online store if I wanted a physical book. But the having it there for free stoked my interest if the webcomic was to my taste enough to where I'd actually buy the physical book. And I have bought physical books of webcomics that I've liked in the past, and I'll show you a couple now. So I'll go over them quickly because they're not it's not the point of this video, but first one is Power Stars. It's a comic by my friend Ben Bates. It's a webcomic on Webtoons, and it's actually one of the best comics for kids that I have ever read. This is not something that I read when I was younger. This is something I read after I met him, but actually reading it and taking it all in, I was just like, this is basically One Piece levels of writing, where there's always a conflict rolling forward and pushing the story forward. I thought this was just really strong, and it would be a great find if anybody. It's a hidden gem. That's what most webcomics are. It's a hidden gem that if you found it and were starting to read it for free, you'd be surprised at how much you would like it. So that's Power Stars. Next book is Check Please by my friend Ngozi Ukazu, and she's actually the one helping me publish Saintly. And we've been in contact with each other since about 2019. And I only just read her book this year. I only put it off for so many years because this is a BL, and I was afraid of looking gay. But one day I kicked it open and I read just a little snippet of dialogue in the book, and I was like, wait a minute. This is actually super good. And I kept flipping through. I was just like, wait a minute, this actually sounds like how guys talk. Like, it doesn't sound like weird at all. It just is actually how people sound. And it really reminded me of how real the characters sound in Brian Lee O'Malley's Scott Pilgrim. And I would put them right next to each other in terms of how real the characters sound. I can see why this book was so successful and why it did over $1 million on Kickstarter in funding. So if you're into BL and that kind of stuff, please check out Check Please. It is just that good. And then Empowered. Empowered is a webcomic, but it actually started off being published with Dark Horse first. And so that was a story that I got familiar with reading it for free in my local library, and I was so enamored with the story that I had to actually buy the physical books whenever I had the opportunity. So Empowered was one of those. It was like such a strong story that I was just like, I need to buy the books. Let me go buy them. And he posted them as a webcomic later on after most of the story was done. The Witch's Throne. I have a whole video on this story and the power system of the main character, Agni. And this story was just so good that I actually, once I saw it in Walmart, I was just like, yo, this is here. Let me just pick that up. And I found it. I was just like, let me buy it, support the author. And yeah, it's just really solid storytelling, really good book with really great art. This actually isn't just a solo creator. They have an editor and also a color assistant, I think. So yeah, the creator's name is Cedric Caballas, and yeah, he's a great artist. And the last one, and definitely not the least one, is Unsounded by Ashley Cope. One of my favorite webcomics ever. Probably one of the toppest tier webcomics that could stand toe to toe with any manga that you read online. Like, it is online, it's for free, and that is such a steal because this should be a published book in any major publishing house. It is one of the best webcomics you'll ever read. I don't know why it doesn't have any type of animation, any type of further adaptation. It's just that top tier. There's still a gaping hole in my heart where book 2 should be, and for years I've been hoping to get a chance to buy it. So maybe one of these days I will get that opportunity. But yeah, that's webcomics created off of the freemium model. They were made as webcomics first, for the most part, and then sold later as physical products. And there's a whole host of other products that you can make out of having your own webcomic that include merch, like stickers, bookmarks, prints, toys, you name it. Whereas with the indie comic model, you might go in that direction if you're a writer and an artist and other people working together as a team to create a more detailed book that one person couldn't do on their own. A lot of times indie comics are created by writers or artists with a detailed style that takes a while to actually create, and they might have more of a need for financial gain specifically so that they can continue working on the book. Like, the book survives based on the financial gain that they are able to realize through their campaigns. If their campaigns do well, the book continues on. If it doesn't do well, then the book can still continue on, but they're gonna have to find a way to work with somebody who can help them continue the story despite the lack of funds needed to really make it happen. And so that might slow down production if the funds aren't rolling in like they're supposed to. Whereas with a webcomic, a lot of the times people are doing that just off on the side of their actual job. They're doing 1 to 2 to 3 pages a week online and posting them as they go, sometimes for fun, sometimes as a business, and there's much less of a barrier to entry for webcomics because of that. So you can post pretty much any quality of work as a webcomic because you're not expecting to be paid for it. Whereas if you're making an indie comic, it has to meet a certain threshold of some level of quality in order to receive money for it. It doesn't even have to be a high level of quality. It doesn't have to be Jim Lee style. It doesn't have to be, top tier. It just needs to reach a certain level for people to feel like you've provided enough value to give their money over to it, especially with most of the comic being sight unseen, where you don't know exactly what's in it. You don't know the whole story. You don't even know if it's going to be good. But if you can get enough of a teaser of the art inside or the story and it seems interesting enough to you, then you purchase, and the comic gets to survive a little longer if the campaigns do well enough. And so that's just a bit of a breakdown between the freemium model of webcomics and the indie comics model of indie comics, and the differences and why you might choose one over the other. So in the comments, tell me which one you actually prefer and what you think about the release schedule of webcomics versus the release schedule of indie comics, because they tend to be a lot longer in coming out in general, usually based on time, money, resources that they have at their disposal. So let me know in the comments. And if you'd like to check out a supernatural horror webcomic that I'm working on, it's called Saintly. It is a demon chase horror action comedy about two best friends who have to outrun the demon loan sharks that they borrowed from. Basically, it's like Scooby-Doo meets K-pop Demon Hunters without the K-pop. And the story backs the main character into a corner where she has to decide between the hard path to success or lose her soul to the lure of easy money. And we get to see the ramifications of her choice, and if she can hide this deal with the devil from her friend, or if it will tear them apart. And I hope you read my comic in the description and check out the story. It should appear in your email inbox or your spam folder if you don't see it. So thank you for watching. Please rate, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.